Uh-oh. I'm going to get in trouble with this video because in this video, we will be doing an expose on Bernie Sanders, not just me, but also Larken Rose, an anarchist scholar, philosopher, author, an overall really, really fascinating, interesting human being. And I really wanted to delve into the topic of Bernie Sanders. Who is he? Why is he so popular? And kind of really talking to some of his supporters, because again, just because I'm making this video, half of the likes are going to be dislikes. There's going to be a lot of negative comments, but I think this video is going to be very important. And I couldn't think of anyone completely opposite of Bernie Sanders more than Larken Rose himself. So I thank you so much for joining us. The website and everything you do will be in the description below. But first of all, I really wanted to diagnose who Bernie Sanders is. How would you kind of describe him, Bernie Sanders?
Well, first and foremost, he's a politician, and he's a career politician. He's done it for a very long time. He hasn't had a real job. But the reason he has lots of fans is he can do the politician game of pretending that he wants to do politicianing for their sake, for their benefit, to give them free stuff and free healthcare and free this and that and the other thing. And he's made a career of that. He's made a career of promising free stuff to people and leaving out the part about where does this free stuff come from? How do they get it? And that's by way of government violence. And so he's... I can totally sympathize with the people who basically fall for it because it is a scam, it is a lie, because they fall for it because they hear the compassionate helping people, giving people part. And this is why there are communists, it's why there are socialists. I mean, some may just be bitter psychos, but I think most of them actually like the idea of helping the poor and helping this person, helping that people. And when you leave off the part of the story about, yeah, but how is this funded? Well, it's funded by taxation. Well, what's that? It's government saying, give me your money.
And I really think a lot of people, support him because there are a lot of people who are legitimately struggling out there, especially with corrupt industries, the medical industrial complex, the corrupt college systems. People are just riddled with debt. And I think, again, we have to remind people that these are problems that predominantly revolve around, can you guess? Can you guess what they revolve around?
Maybe government. Imagine that. Yeah, and the problem is when somebody rails against actual injustices and actual situations that are bad and we don't want to see, and this is bad and that's bad and the other thing's bad, it's easy to go, rah, 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 you're complaining about the things that should be complained about and not look too closely at their solutions. And if you open a history book, you see that every single one of the most famous, nasty, brutal tyrants, they rose to power complaining about things that were actually unjust and actually bad. Hitler complained about actual injustices being done to Germany. Mao, Stalin, they complained about actual injustice being done by the ruling classes back then. And people were like, rah, 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 we love the fact that you condemn the status quo and as it is, which is why every politician pretends to be against the status quo, even politicians like Bernie who've been the status quo for his whole freaking life. But people can get so excited about, I'm so glad you're condemning that bad thing, that they don't bother to look closely and find out, oh, you're advocating a slightly different flavor of the same freaking bad thing. Yeah. And with Bernie, the most obvious example is, the government's so corrupt and it does all these things and blah, blah, blah. That's why we need it to take more of your money. Yeah. It's like, how is that going to help? But people are so excited when they hear the bad guys condemned that they miss the fact that you're cheering for the next bad guy who would abuse you just the same way if he has political power.
Yeah. My favorite meme is a protester screaming, we need more government, and then a riot police officer just spraying her with mace. That's one of my favorite memes out there. And again, just trying to do this from a kind of empathetic kind of way. He has been surging in the polls. There has been an anti-establishment kind of crux built against him by the mainstream media, by the likes of Hillary Clinton, by the likes of establishment Democrats, who now are trying to get all the moderates to drop out of the Democratic kind of selection that's happening right now. And they want all the moderates to just pick one. So the kind of radical Bernie Sanders, this is another thing that I think is worth really looking into is I think, I mean, we're not stupid anymore. We know that every time the establishment attacks someone, they become more popular. I mean, look what happened with Donald Trump. And you made the argument, and I kind of want you to expand on this, that Bernie Sanders wouldn't exist without Donald Trump. What did you mean by that?
Yeah. The political game, basically, there's one ruling class with two sets of puppets that go back and forth and pretend to be arch enemies and stuff. And when you get one side being really horrible, I mean, look how many campaigns are entirely about how horrible the other side is. Not about how, like, this is actually a positive good thing over here, but about how horrible that is. And it's a perfect trick to keep people jumping back and forth between one horrible thing to another horrible thing. And I think the only way you could actually get a self-avowed socialist anywhere near the throne is to have someone so obnoxiously, fascistly psychotic like Trump that people think maybe that's actually a better alternative. If you had somebody like sane and moderate and rational at all, I think Bernie would be like, no, we're not that bonkers yet.
I always support people, especially when they get cheated. And this is another thing that's very important to note here. Bernie Sanders got cheated, especially in the last election. We're still figuring out all the details of Iowa, but he looks like he also got screwed over there by the CIA candidate, Mr. Buttigieg. That's a whole nother topic to get into in itself. And every time Bernie gets screwed over, I will always defend him when he gets treated unfairly. But he doesn't really stand up for himself. That's another thing that I really wanted to kind of elaborate on and talk about, is when Hillary Clinton screwed him over, he played the politics game. Whenever the military budgets, the spending budgets comes in, he signs them. A couple years ago, he was warning about open immigration being a Koch brothers plan to destroy the middle class. And now, open borders in a different way. But now that kind of conflicts in kind of that anarchistic ideology. How do you contend with the whole kind of open borders argument by Bernie Sanders? How do you see it? Do you see it as kind of something good or bad?
Well, notice that every politician has certain things where they advocate freedom for people. Like Republicans love to go, we want less taxes and take less of your money. I mean, they don't do that, but they at least pretend they want that. And so people go, rah, 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 they're pro-freedom. And the Democrats are like, we want, marijuana, legalized or whatever it is, or we want less, horrible fascist border controls. The thing is, it's fine if somebody says, we want this amount of freedom for people in this area. But when they're running for public office, the punchline is always, but I want to be in charge and I want the power and I'm going to control all these things. But you should cheer for me because I'm not going to control, by violent, government violence, this little thing over here. I'll leave you in freedom with that, and then I'll violently control all this. So when a politician advocates freedom, like is on my side on a particular issue, like somebody is like, well, I'm against gun control or something, to me it's always, okay, so that's one area in which it's sort of like somebody saying, the street thug saying, I will never beat you up on a Tuesday. It's like, well, thanks, but you're still my enemy.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. It definitely makes you kind of like point things out in a rational sense, away from the kind of hyperbolic, sensational, constant attention drumming of the head that we call news. And I really do appreciate some of the perspectives. I don't agree with some of them, I disagree with some of them, but I think it's important to kind of have this open and honest dialogue. And also remember one important caveat out of all of this. This is a selection. And when a politician is going for his selection, they say a whole bunch of stuff. Donald Trump said a whole bunch of stuff. Obama said a whole bunch of stuff. Bush said a whole bunch of stuff that never came true. This is the same horse and pony game that we get every 4 years. Every 8 years there's a switch. And we have to remember, every time this happens, people get tricked back into the kind of emotional cycle. Is there a way out of it? Is there a way to help the Bernie bros out there? Is there a way to help expose this game to a level? Because I think it's far more controlled than we even get. And I think even the establishment attacks are even coordinated within themselves. Is there a way out of it somehow? Because it's very sophisticated even to understand.
Yeah, instead of looking at different politicians and seeing which establishment corrupt, bogus stuff they complain about and rail against, listen to people who oppose all of the government authoritarian garbage, who oppose all of the corruption and aren't just advocating, here's a slightly different flavor of authoritarian collectivism, and advocate actual freedom. And you will never hear that in a political campaign. You will never see that in a voting booth. because the game is about domination. It's not about your vote is your voice and this is how we blah, blah, blah. It's about tricking people into putting up with domination. And you give them a choice between two lying crooks, and then they feel empowered, and then the next year they're stomped on again. The way out is ignore that game entirely and build a society where we stop arguing over who should be on the throne and start realizing there shouldn't frickin' be a throne.
And that you're responsible for yourself, which I'm a huge advocate of. And I'm like, self-responsibility. That's all you need to do. Start making small decisions in your life not to be a victim. And sadly, because I do see a lot of victims of very bad private interests, very bad public interests, because I see that, I think this is why Bernie's so popular, because he's talking really nice.
Yeah.
He has he has charisma. He has that kind of energy behind him that's really something that is worth noting, and there's no denying. But again, he's someone that I wouldn't support, because I know that the only person responsible for me is me. That's one of the lessons you also preach. Where can people find out more information about you, more of your kind of books, more of your philosophies, and everything that you do?
Probably the best place is just my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Larken Rose, because there's a whole bunch of stuff there. There's also larkenrose.com. And now, as of a couple days ago, I almost forgot to mention this, we have therosechannel.com, where all our stuff is going to be.
Awesome. We're going to put that link in the description below. Larken, thank you so much for joining us for this insightful conversation. You're going to click the dislike button. It's okay. It's fine. It's okay. We're starting a conversation, and that's all that matters. Very interesting, amazing conversations happening here, and of course, beautiful Acapulco, Mexico, during the Anarchapulco conference. Stay tuned for more coverage here, which again, wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for you and your support. Love you guys. Stay tuned for more here on wearechange.org.